At some point, you'll want to dock your Steam Deck, and you'll want a controller for that. And today, I'm presenting 2 controllers, thanks to BIGBIG for sending these over. As always, my opinion remains my own. Do these controllers have what it takes to compete? They might, but the question is, how so? The controller we're going to start out with is the Rainbow 2 controller. At first glance, it kind of looks like a standard Xbox One controller, and I guess you could say that's not entirely far from the truth. Inside the box, you can find the controller, an alternative D-pad, alternative stick caps, and this version of the controller came with a charging stand, though not all versions will come with it. I do like that they added this phone to protect the sticks. We'll talk more about the controller later, but for now, let's get into the accessories inside the box. So this right here is the charging stand. You plug in a USB Type-C cable into it, and then you line up the pogo pins with the controller. It's even got an extra USB-A port. What's that port for? Well, I'll tell you what it's for. It's primarily meant for this thing right here. This right here is the 2.4 GHz dongle. This controller has multiple avenues of connectivity. One of them being a more direct dongle connection. See, you plug this into your computer and then you turn on the controller and it just works. It's that easy. This dongle has a pass-through USB-C port, which I've never seen before in a dongle. We'll get to how all of these pass-throughs work. Also included in the box is this alternative D-pad. It's a circular D-pad, kind of like the Elite D-pad, but honestly, I'm not a huge fan of those, but it's good that it's an option there. And there are your stick caps. Underneath here are some other stuff. You've got here the manual, and you've got a USB Type-C cable. The manual tells you everything that should be in the box, as well as a bunch of legal mumbo jumbo. In the meantime though, I think it's time to move on. So the controller itself is more or less a standard Xbox controller. It has a full complement of controllers, including 2 joysticks, a D-pad, face buttons, start and select, bumpers, and full analog triggers, meaning you can play racing games. There's also a switch in the back, turning them into hair triggers, perfect for shooters. The ergonomics feel just right. It feels very similar to an Xbox One controller. Heck, I would even say it feels similar to an Xbox Elite controller. It's got a textured grip in the back, meaning that your controller won't fall out of your hands at any point in time. Also included are some macro buttons, 2 in the back and 2 beside the triggers. I'm not gonna lie to you, I've never used a controller where there were macro buttons next to the triggers. That said, this feels very natural in my hands. I think the near trigger macro buttons feel a lot better than the grip macro buttons. That said, there's definitely room for 2 more macro buttons on the grip, much like most other Elite controllers. You can set up a simple macro without using any sort of software whatsoever. All you need is the controller itself. The most common use is to map these face buttons elsewhere. To map a macro button, hold the second button towards the bottom and whatever macro button you want. You should see an indicator light up. You see that button by the right stick? Once you see that light up, that's when you know it's time to record. Press whatever button you want to record. For example, I recorded A, so now when I press this macro button, it presses A, which in turn jumps an ultra kill. Remapping is useful, but there's more you can do. Let's say you want to do some more complex actions, like say projectile boosting. By using the 3rd button towards the bottom, you can record entire sequences. Press and hold that 3rd button plus whatever macro button you want to define. And now you're ready to record entire sequences. And then just do the entire sequence. It also takes into account delays between actions. So yes, you still have to be able to do the action by hand before you can actually record it. But as you can see here, you've got a handy macro for projectile boosting. There is one more really neat feature. That is Gyro. There's actually 2 ways this controller does Gyro. First is that you can put this in Nintendo Switch Pro controller mode, and it activates Gyro that way. It actually registers as a Switch Pro controller on the Steam Deck, meaning you can use Steam input to define what the gyro actually does. But alternatively, if you set it to Xbox mode, the controller has a really neat function for emulating the right or left stick with gyro. There's an entire tutorial on how to set up gyro on this thing, but to be honest, I still need to calibrate this gyro mode. Maybe Ultra Kill wasn't the best game to use with this controller, but it will take a bit for me to calibrate the gyro, which there are instructions on their website for. All the macro stuff is really cool, and even the emulated gyro functionality gives it some life. But what about the most important part of the controller? You know, the controls itself. I would say the sticks feel pretty good. They feel just like Xbox sticks, but at the end of the day, they basically just are Xbox sticks. But what would have made them a lot better is if they were Hall effect sticks. There's one major benefit that Hall effect sticks have that other sticks don't have. That being, they won't eventually succumb to stick drift. It's just inevitable. It's inevitable for any controller that doesn't have Hall effects, and I would pay more for a version with Hall effect sticks. But aside from that, the sticks are pretty good. The face buttons feel nice. They feel a little taller, but they don't take any more force than, say, a standard Xbox controller. The weakest part of the controller, in my opinion, is the D-pad. The D-pad still functions. Honestly, it works just fine. It's just not my preference of D-pad. Personally, my D-pads, I prefer a little more throw. Like, I wish I could feel the direction more. You know what I'm saying? But it's more of a nitpick than a real issue, honestly. The grip buttons feel nice. I think they could stand to be a little stiffer, but that's just me. The macro buttons being next to the triggers, honestly, that's like a stroke of genius. I know there are other controllers that kind of have that controller layout, but I've never used them before, and now I'm a believer. And now for the bumpers and triggers themselves. The bumpers are alright. The triggers feel nice, and there's even hair triggers. The only thing I could want is if these bumpers and triggers were made out of metal, kind of like the Xbox Elite controller or the Goalie Cake controller. You know, now that I think about it, I never talked about the other controller. And there's a reason for that. And that's because outside of some minor differences in feel and ergonomics, it's fairly similar to the other one. This one, however, is more of a Switch Pro controller than anything else, really. So it's got the same thumbsticks, it's got the same D-pad, and it's got the same macro buttons. But what are the real differences? Well, the triggers featured on this controller are not full analog triggers, meaning they're not really suitable for racing games. The face buttons are a lot clickier, almost like a gaming mouse. And honestly, I think I might like the face buttons on this one better. This controller also has NFC functionality for amiibos on your Switch. Unfortunately, this one didn't come with a charging stand, but I guess that's to be expected, right? I mean, this one's $10 cheaper than the other one. Remapping and macro functionality is the same. Both of these controllers are very feature packed, but it really depends on if you prefer Xbox style controllers or Nintendo Switch Pro style controllers. Do you need full analog triggers or do you need NFC functionality? Both the Rainbow 2 Pro and the Blitz can be used on the Nintendo Switch, but the Blitz having NFC capabilities with amiibos makes this the better option for Switch users, assuming you still care about amiibos. But what about the Steam Deck? Can you use both of these on the Steam Deck? Well, yes, you can. You can use it wired or wireless. You can pair it up via Bluetooth. And while I did mention the dongle unfortunately doesn't seem to work on Steam Deck. Like, yes, I plugged it in via the official Valve Steam Deck dock, if that matters. I tried another dock as well. Unfortunately, it didn't work. Like, I plugged the dongle in and I turned my controller on, and it paired with the dock just fine. It just doesn't register any inputs. But I couldn't tell you why though. But Bluetooth is more than good enough for casual use. But if you're gonna play at a hardcore setting, you may as well just plug it in directly anyways. As for the dongle itself, it seems like it might just be a charging pass-through. Neither the BIGBIG One website nor the instruction manual told me what the dongle can actually do besides be a dongle. So yeah, there's that. All in all, this is a pretty solid controller. How do these stack up to the competition? I mean, these controllers don't exist in a vacuum, you know. When compared to other Pro controllers, this is a lot cheaper. If you want the ease of use remapping functionality, or the macro functionality, or even the turbo functionality. I forgot to mention, this controller has turbo. Maybe consider getting this controller. Both of these controllers at base price have a comparable price to, say, an actual Xbox controller or a DualSense. That said, if you don't need macro functionality or back buttons or anything of the sort, then there are cheaper options that'll work with your PC or Steam Deck. Heck, some of them will even work on Nintendo Switch as well. I can solidly recommend them for their price, and if they ever go on sale, definitely pick these up. They're almost perfect. I think what would have made them perfect is if they both had Hall effect sticks, and if the dongle worked on Steam Deck, though I think they could fix that with an update. Maybe. I don't know. If you liked this video, be sure to press the thumbs up button and spread the good gospel of high-tech lowlife. And if you want to see more high-tech lowlife, be sure to subscribe and press the bell icon for notifications. And for you enlightened individuals, be sure to join my Discord server. And if you wish to support high-tech lowlife, be sure to check out our Patreon page. Links in the description down below.